It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Thanks for joining us, folks. I'm Sam Lesante, and remember, folks, if you're watching us on Service Electric Cablevision, we are now on the HD channel 513, and we want to say hi to all our friends in the Pottsville area, Wilkes-Barre area, and also now in the greater Scranton area on Comcast 190. But if you're on Service Electric Cablevision here in the greater Hazleton area, now 50,000 households, channel 513. My guest today, folks, no stranger to the Sam Lesante Show. I haven't seen him in a while, but I want to bring him back on to talk about the mess. Yes, folks, the mess we have in Harrisburg. If you recall, in the last couple of months, I had Senator Udicek on and Representative Tara Toohill on talking about different facets of the budget. Now, Dan, it's nice to see you.
Great to see you, Sam.
Dan Meuser, former Secretary of Revenue. I miss you.
Well, thanks. I
miss you and I miss Corbett. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Democrats also miss you guys. Okay?
Anybody who wants to get things done probably misses us.
The interesting thing is and I respect the governor's office, and I like to deal with facts. And I've said this before in many of my shows, Dan. When you came on, you were the only one that ever presented actual facts the way they were. You never, played agendas or spins, etc. And that's why I always respected you. And also Governor Corbett. When I interviewed him for the Attorney General, what he said he did. What he said he wasn't doing as governor, he did. So
I always would say the numbers are the reality after the rhetoric. So,
yeah.
Okay.
So now they say that #1, that Governor Wolf inherited a mess from the Corbett administration. Okay. What mess did he inherit?
Well, I mean, they had after the revenue surplus for that fiscal year, they had about a 1.6, 1.7 maybe billion dollar deficit. Now, when we came in, we had a $4.2 billion deficit. Every year thereafter, we had a $1.2 billion deficit. Frankly, we didn't exclaim to the media that the sky was falling every year when we had a $1.2 billion deficit. And you have to deal with it. You got to work with the legislator. And one thing that I helped do as Revenue Secretary and our budget office did is they dealt with both sides of the ledger. Just like you do in a business, you deal with your operating expenses and you deal with your revenues. Okay? Frankly, it just seems that this governor's office only deals with the one side of the ledger, and that's revenues. And revenues are a euphemism for tax increases on hardworking Pennsylvanians.
Well, it's an interesting thing here. I have some money here, okay? And folks, I did this with Representative Tara Toohill, but this is how they try to let you believe that the Corbett administration did not fund education. Now, Dan, if I give you $5 every year, you get $5 every year, okay? And you're going to pay whatever you have to pay. But one year comes along, someone gives me an extra $20. And they say, look, give this to Dan. This is only for a short period of time, but let him do what he wants to do. So I give you $20, okay? So now this year you have $25. Now, the $20 that I just gave you one time, I have to take away. But, Dan, I'm going to give you $6 a year now instead of $5. Right. To me, that's a 20% increase in what you had before. Yeah. Okay. Well, now here's what they're doing with education.
It's a very fair way of putting it. Yeah. But there's no reason to go back, right? I mean, it's looking forward. Yeah. And our legislator, which is Republican in the House, Republican in the Senate, is not anti-education. Yeah. I mean, they're significantly supportive of education. And it's a little dismaying when the governor's office is continuing to try to put teachers against taxpayers. Yes. That's unfortunate and sad, frankly. You can do both, but you got to reach that balance to get both done. Well, but I'm sorry.
That's okay. But the point is that they're saying that you cut education because you had that stimulus money. Okay. In fact, you guys had the highest. Correct me if I'm wrong. The highest amount of money in education. Is that correct?
The last couple of years, yes, we did. Initially, if you include in the state-relateds and the some of the higher education, they're it was about even, but on basic education and our public schools had higher expenditures higher funding for schools than ever before. And yes, it was the stimulus lie that took place,
Yes.
and it really was. But really, what's most important, it was such a high level of misinformation that was taking place. It wasn't information; it was misinformation, and it's just a shame that that this continues. There's no reason for it. I mean, things need to get real. Our state is in close to a crisis situation. Nothing is getting done in Harrisburg. Heck, the United Ways of the state aren't getting funded. There's interest debt on schools. There's still all kinds of other discretionary spending that's held up in Harrisburg. And yet we have a governor who proposed at the beginning of this fiscal year a $5.5 billion increase in tax revenues. $5.5 billion. Do you know what that amount is? That was more of a tax increase than every other governor in every other state combined in the United States. He was calling for a higher level of new tax revenues than the entire country of governors, Republican and Democrat, put together. And he wondered why the legislator who talks to the people, works for the people, was a little against something like that.
Yeah. We talk about this. You have mixed emotions. You have the governor pointing the finger at the Republicans, the legislators, saying, you gave me garbage, and it continues to berate them. To me, I'm thinking that if you want to negotiate, maybe it's best if you bring people in instead of antagonize people. That's only my opinion. What do you think about that?
Well, it's a sort of an outrageous way of trying to gain an inclusionary and a consensus to get something done. I don't think it works. So what is necessary is, again, finding that balance. Seeing what the goals are in the end, and achieving them. But again, it's so much about accountability in government. You see what's happening even on the presidential side. There's a lot of good people, some qualified, arguably some maybe not so qualified. But in the end, many of them have the same plans. But what it's really about is who do you trust to see those plans through, and who can actually get something done? I mean, that's where we're getting in government. And these guys, and frankly, the governor's office is in a vacuum. I mean, they're very out of touch. I mean, they just think that they can pretend to have the last budget even resolved, which it's not, right? 15-16 is still not even resolved, and yet the written budget proposal that was submitted has a $2.6 billion tax increase on top of the 30.8 that they hope to receive in the previous budget. So they're building upon, it's not even building upon a house of cards. It's building on a fictional house of cards.
And in any business, in your business, in our business, a lot of things we don't know. So we go out and we hire people who know more about those areas than we know, okay? And that's what I think administration is about. When Governor Corbett surrounded himself with his cabinet, I didn't know all of them, but I knew most of them, okay? And what he did was he surrounded himself with people that were educated, people that would be able to advise him, okay? I'm just wondering, who's surrounding this governor? Because it's clear. I mean, there are a lot of Democrats, okay? A lot of senators and representatives are very frustrated with this governor, okay? Now, they're not coming out, and except maybe one or two of them have voiced this displeasure. Most of them are closet cases here, okay? Is it possible that the people he had, like, for example, this campaign that he used with TV and going after the Republicans was, I think, a disaster, antagonizing. Did you guys have input with Corbett?
Well, sure. Me primarily on taxes and revenues and handling certain aspects of the budget, and we actually did pass some very strong tax reform. In fact, we lowered taxes by over $1 billion during the course of, and we also greatly improved the Department of Revenue, as I think I mentioned to you. We took our ranking of a D+, we took it to an A-, and while doing that, because we improved taxpayer services, we increased revenues by $2.4 billion. See, I'm a private sector guy that's been in the public sector for 4 years. It was a very in-depth, involved 4 years, but I believe it can actually work. And maybe that's my curse, since I want to continue in it. But maybe it's a blessing. I know it can work, and many legislators know it can work in the House and the Senate. And so, what do we need to do? They talk about a structural deficit. Again, I go back. The structural deficit. It's a word that buzzword everybody likes using. Yet 6-7 years ago, our budget was $5 billion less. Right? Under the Corbett administration, by the way, we increased revenues over 4 years only by $1 billion. Under the previous administration, they raised revenues $1 billion a year. Last year, Wolf's budget called for near $2 billion increase, and this one's another $2 billion increases. So my point is, 6-7 years ago, somehow we managed to suffer through with a $25 billion budget, right? And today, $31 billion isn't enough. 6 years later. I don't know, are government services that much better? Are schools that much better, performing better? Are our state-related colleges that much less expensive? No.
Folks, I'm talking to former Secretary of Revenue Dan Meuser. Always presented the facts, and of course, I always welcome opposing viewpoints here. Now, Dan is also chairman of Growth and Opportunity Fund. Okay, he's the chairman of this, and they sent out a news release on the proposed budget raises and the serious concerns for Pennsylvania families who are all going to be affected by this. We'll be back right after this. Thanks for staying with us, folks. I'm Sam Lesante. Remember, you can watch all of our programming that we produce, all 21, 22 local programs on our website, ssptv.com, 24/7. My email is sam@ssptv.com. And once again, for those of you who are watching us on Service Electric Cablevision, we're also now on channel 513 HD. Comcast 190 in Pottsville, Comcast 190 in the Lackawanna area, and channel 92 on the Service Electric Cable in Wilkes-Barre system. My guest today, former Secretary of Revenue, Dan Meuser. And as I said to you before, Dan always comes here and tells it the way it is. Well, let's tell it, before we get into your Growth and Opportunity Fund that you're involved with, let's talk about the details of this budget.
Well, it's very one-sided, and pretty much the governor is once again asking the legislator to give him a blank check with very little accountability to spend it on the things he wants to spend it on. He is looking for some details, it's over about a 10%, 11% increase in everybody's personal income tax from 3.07 to 3.4. That raises about $2 billion. So instead of the general public and workers throughout Pennsylvania having that $2 billion, he thinks it's better used in Harrisburg for things he wants to spend on. He wants to increase the severance tax, which has been talked about a lot and all. And right now, the natural gas industry in our state is going dark. The jobs are leaving. I mean, there's a glut of natural gas, so it's not really due to anything except the nature of that business. But it doesn't help when you have a governor's office that is continuing saying, hey, we're going to increase regulations on you, we're going to increase taxes on you. It doesn't create a welcoming environment for the development of the natural gas industry. Now, one thing on that, and the only reason that some people are against the idea of a severance tax, all right, is because we're already taxing the natural gas industry through an impact fee, which brings in over $200 million a year. But you know where you get the most revenue from a natural gas industry or any industry? By that industry thriving. When that industry is doing business and hiring people, right? I mean, that's what does it. I used to count those taxes. They were high. They were near $400 million before you even counted in all the PIT and the sales tax, the personal income tax and the sales tax that would come from all the people that were employed. I say all the time, somebody says, what's the number one revenue generator for a state or for a government? And you know what it is? It's job creation. You create a job, you bring in an extra $2,000 just into Pennsylvania. On the federal level, it's much higher than that. That's how you, through pro-growth strategies, you increase revenues. But he wants to tax cigarettes, tobaccos. You go to the movies, he wants to increase or expand the sales tax. Just very quickly back on the severance tax, I'll tell you what the best plan that people should look forward to. Not that Harrisburg takes more from the gas companies, but that those gas companies start writing checks once that industry does start flourishing, and it will, and gets out of its infancy and comes back in 3, 4, 5 years. Then the check should be going directly to the people of Pennsylvania. That's what can happen. And that's what happened in Alaska, and that's what happened in Texas. Some really great things. We have the largest shale deposit reserve of natural gas in the world. And the last thing we should do is be trying to chase it away, right? We should be nourishing it, and it will truly be great for all. But anyway, those are some of the details. He's calling for a $2.6 billion increase. I mean, $2.6 billion, that's enormous. On top of, again, the fictional level that he hasn't even gotten yet of the $2 billion or so increase from last year. So it's completely one-sided, and why people are against it, Sam, is because it doesn't improve anything. It just brings in more money to pay for more services and for more things, right? It doesn't bring any accountability to the spending. And one taxpayer put it best to me. He said, you know what, why should I? Look, teachers deserve the pay that they deserve, state workers, they have a contract and so on, but the pensions are now excessive and reforms need to take place. Why should I have to pay more in taxes so we can continue to pay increases in the excessive pension plans? Those dollars aren't going into the schools. It's not about kids. It's about sustaining the very excessive pension levels that are increasing this year $700 million.
My question to you is this. If someone, when you became a teacher, you knew what you were getting into. You knew that you were going to get paid so much and you had a pension, okay? So you can't fault the teachers that went into that program knowing what they were going to get.
Of course not.
So those people, teachers who have the pensions, I think they went into that, they deserve that.
Everything that's vested, everything that they've earned, they get, right?
Now,
no cutbacks.
it's the new ones that we have to make reforms.
Yeah, and provide a program that is equivalent or better than anything that exists in the private sector, which is certainly more within the 401k lines and more within defined contributions as opposed to defined benefits. But the pay can still remain the same, and there still can be great advantages to being a teacher in Pennsylvania, but you need accountability, you need quality standards, and you need to bring down this $700 million increase every year. $700 million on basically a $30 billion budget. It's far too much.
When does accountability, and I've been saying this for years, we have to do it in business every year, okay? When does the people in the state of Pennsylvania say, okay, listen, where is the accountability? If I'm investing X amount of dollars in education, what am I getting out of it? Okay, if I'm investing X amount of dollars in the roads or transportation, what are we getting out of it? Looking at education, all right, and he's putting the thing that if this doesn't go through, they're going to lose 23,000 teachers, et cetera. There's typical propaganda that the Democrats this is to send out. And it could be worked both ways, okay? It just so happens that they're trying to justify Governor Wolf. I think he's a first-time governor. That's my opinion.
A one-time governor.
A one-time, I'm sorry,
I think that's what you meant.
Yeah, a one-time governor. So where did you have accountability when you were the Secretary of Revenue?
How did I have accountability?
Yeah, where did you have when you were funding, how did these people, how were they accountable to?
I reviewed metrics. I mean, we had a number of private sector people as agency heads. I mean, I led the Department of Revenue. I mean, we reduced our complement by 200 people, only through attrition, not through furloughs. Instead of having a supervisor for every 3 people, we moved it to a supervisor for about every 6. In the private sector, it's probably closer to 1 to 9. We focused on collecting all the taxes that were due, right? So we brought in technology to enhance revenues without increasing taxes. I mean, we set up metrics for real performance. And like I said, I mean, our department, we improved taxpayer services, which I would call customer services. All these things can be done in government, and they can be done for less. I mean, you can do more with less. The private sector has been doing it that way for 15 years. That's the only way companies have survived. The government has not.
Folks, Dan Meuser, former Secretary of Revenue for the state of Pennsylvania. Come back, we'll talk about what can you do. I mean, we hear about the concerns. We hear about this mess. We hear about, now what can we do as citizens in the state of Pennsylvania? And what about this Growth Opportunity Fund that Dan is the chairman of? We'll discuss that when we come back after the break. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. 24/7, SSPTV.com. My email is sam@ssptv.com. My guest today, former Secretary of Revenue in the state of Pennsylvania, Dan Meuser. Now he's also the chairman of the Growth and Opportunity Fund. Now, let's talk about this Growth and Opportunity Fund that you have. What is it about?
Well, it's a policy advocacy organization. The policies that we're advocating lead to growth and opportunity. So our three macro policy advocacy principles are, first of all, accountability in spending. Secondly, competitive tax rates, keeping taxes as low as possible. And third, real common sense regulatory reform. Now, the thing is, those probably aren't new concepts to many, but what I believe, and frankly, I'm positive of, and that's why I took this role as chairman of it, is that those policies do lead to growth and opportunity and prosperity and higher standard of living for Pennsylvania families. And frankly, primarily, I think about middle income earners, certainly those at the lower end of income, but middle income earners, frankly, I think are the main ones getting squeezed. So what we need to do is advocate and inform the general public, the electorate, the taxpayers, the homeowners and such, on these policies. But more importantly, make sure that we understand, and government in the end understands, and elected officials, what benefits middle income Pennsylvanians need from these policies. What truly are the benefits, not just the feature, but the advantages and the benefits. Really salesmanship 101, giving the customer what they want. And the taxpayer should be looked at as a customer.
On your board, you have Democrats and Republicans, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a bipartisan group. Go4PA.org, folks, is the information if you want to find out about this growth and opportunity and have input. So Go4PA is .org. It's very simple. Dan, so what do our viewers, what do they do? Because they're just as upset with this political nonsense and people lying them and all this. We're going to get rid of school taxes, property taxes, and the seniors keep on getting lied to and lied to and lied to. It's disgusting.
Right. I want people to be able to rely upon growth and opportunity, go4pa.org, as a objective, factual messaging organization, and that's really what we are. We are policy advocacy, as I said, so we're gaining a lot of research from other places, and we're using that to appropriately, effectively, but fairly and honestly, the benefits of what these policies are in the end. And, you know, frankly, I think, again, middle income, which make up the majority of the population and electorate of Pennsylvania and our country, right, care a lot about how their taxpayer dollars are spent. I mean, if they're spent well on the core functions of government, if they improve their government services for the parks and everything else, if by lowering their taxes, they truly have more income in their own pockets, and it creates more jobs and is attractive to business owners, if regulatory reform allows taking the burden off of primarily small businesses and frankly families from having, you know, if somebody wants to build a garage in their backyard, they don't need to, you know, you got to follow the local ordinance rules, but you know, they don't need to have to wait 9 months to get those through. If they see their government working for them, they'll understand the benefits. And that's what's most important that is lacking in the messaging. Features are one thing. I think people have heard the features, but people need to really understand the benefits, and that's what growth and opportunity is going to be about.
Well, Dan, you've always been very honest. You've always been factual, and I appreciate that very much. And I think our viewers do, despite the fact that either a Republican or a Democrat, because we have liars on both sides and people who just want votes and votes, and they promise things that they can't deliver. That's why it was so unfortunate we lost Governor Corbett, because everything he said, he did. And there was an honest politician. But anyway, Dan, I wish you the best. Thanks for coming on the show. Dan Meuser, folks.
Fun.
Go for PA, go4PA.org. You'll look at some common sense reforms. That word common sense that a lot of us who are seniors have, but most of those educated people forgot about common sense. You'll get it here on go4PA.org. We'll see you next time.